So I want to talk about two key things in the building thinking classrooms model. The first thing I want to address is the question of why this one? Why am I so into this one? And the second is starting to help you think about what it would look like in other subject areas besides math. So I'm going to start by talking about I'm going to read actually a few sentences there from two different parts of my TED Talk that I think really play into how I would answer this question of why thinking classrooms? What's the deal? Um, so a chunk from my talk. As early as the late 1800s, theorists such as John Dewey criticized the factory model designed for efficiency that we still use today. Students sit in hard seats. The teacher at a board feeds them information. Students scribble it down, practice, and are tested. So you're already starting to see a problem, I'm hoping. I'm going to keep going. Everyone grinds through the material together, whether they are unable to keep up, uninterested, or already know it. The one who does the work does the learning, but often the teacher does most of the real work of thinking while the students passively receive. That's the problem. It's one of the biggest problems in education is that mostly we just feed students information that can be kind of dull, and we're doing most of the work. Therefore, we're doing most of the learning, and the students are often just kind of mimicking. Hence the reason why, as we've seen previously, they lose up to 90% of the learning quite quickly. Seriously, what is the point? What is the point? So we've got to get students doing more of the work themselves and less of us just feeding them this information. And the good news is, once you get students accustomed to this, it's so much more engaging because they're really thinking and not just kind of passively sitting there, which leads me to another just little short piece from the talk. Nearly all of us were educated in the factory model, witnessing, recording, and regurgitating the teacher's learning rather than discovering for ourselves. With that experience drummed into us, we struggle to imagine something different. So what I'm hoping is that you will start trying to imagine something different, where it isn't just about witnessing and recording the teacher's learning, but helping students discover for themselves. And that's what this model is all about. Now, what would that look like in a subject area other than math? Let me start giving you some examples to get your brain rolling. So in an English class, for example, you might be trying to teach students how, when they write, it is important to show rather than tell. And so what you might have taped to the whiteboards that the groups of three are working at would be two examples of writing, one that's primarily showing and one that's primarily telling, and then asking them increasingly difficult questions, starting with, just what do you notice about the two? They basically say the same thing, but they're quite different. What do you notice? And just getting them to start there. And then kind of increasingly difficult questions that ask them to analyze or critique what they're looking at, and then writing that on the board, even with like arrows pointing to specific sentences and so forth. In history, it might be similar. Like maybe really what you want them to do is analyze chunks of the Declaration of Independence. And so that's what you got stuck up there. Again, you might start with just saying, what do you notice? What are parts that you're struggling to understand? Help one another kind of make out what it is they're trying to say there. Again, you're providing them with something, and instead of just telling them what they should think or what it means, you're asking them increasingly difficult questions to help them as a group, talk and think and write and get at what's happening. You're seeing what they're writing, you're hearing what they're saying. So at any point, if they get too far off target, you're just jumping in. Science. So maybe you could show them an example of an equation that needs to be balanced, and then one that is balanced, a fairly simple example, and say, what seems to have happened? This is called balancing equations. What happened here? See if you can dissect it. And then you can give them increasingly difficult ones that are completed and help them like figure out what's the rule, and then give them some to balance themselves. So again, you're not showing them how to balance an equation and having them mimic. You're asking them to discover what it means to balance an equation by looking at examples. Maybe in a biology class, students could have slips of paper that are parts of the cell. I wouldn't even give them the names. It would just be, one part of the cell does this function, another does this function, all on different sheets of paper. And I just bought, I think I've got some right here. You can cut out these sheets of magnet. You can cut them, they're just sheets and they're easily cut. You can cut them into, like I've got strips, I've got these little squares, it costs very little money. And then that would allow students, because whiteboards are magnetized, this would allow them to kind of, stick things in different parts. And they would have to try to figure out through what the different parts of the cell look like, make reasoned guesses to why different parts would have different functions. Maybe in, let's say, an art class, you would have students look, you'd just have taped or used one of your little magnets, a work of art to the board and asking them to write about how it exemplifies the different elements of art. Where you could give them two different pieces, one that's just of significantly better quality than the other, and ask them to critique why is one more successful. In a world language class, you might have them try to figure out some of the rules of the language by seeing what it looks like and thinking through, okay, what are you noticing? What rules are kind of starting, or can you develop from looking at this language? You could have them attempt to translate something as a group, as a team, to see how much they could make of something before you've ever even taught them maybe this new vocabulary. Again, notice that the theme is you're asking them to do something they don't quite know how to do yet, and you're just saying, just try to problem solve. See how far you can get without me telling you. And when you get stuck, I'm going to maybe give hints, but I want you to really try to figure out this for yourself. I want you to discover it for yourself. In a business class, maybe you could give them an example of a correctly written LLC and one that has issues, and help them, have them try to figure out, where are the issues, what's problematic in the problematic one. These are the kinds of things you're asking them to do. You're basically setting out a problem, asking them questions that'll kind of help them work through the problem piece by piece. And I think what you'll discover is that at first it is hard to get, because it takes energy to think. And that's why in the book, he's suggesting that when you first start doing this, you give them like ultra fun, interesting problems that may have nothing to do with what you're teaching whatsoever. You just use examples straight from the book. But once they've spent a couple days solving these problems together and getting the feel for it, then you can start asking these types of questions that are very much, you know, what you want them to do in the classroom. This is the hardest part to me, because loads of what he's recommending, you can immediately see how it would apply to your own classroom. Like, should I have students up and moving more? Yes. Do groups of 3 make more sense than groups of 2 to 4? Yes. You know, all these different things that, yes, clear. It's the, what would a task look like in my content area? That's where I think you're going to have to do the most hard thinking. And so, especially when you move into your voice threads in this assignment, I want you to really think about that question. What would examples of tasks look like that you could use with students in your grade level in the subjects you teach? And once you all start batting around ideas, I think it'll get easier and easier and easier to imagine what this would look like. And it's pretty cool. Anyway, go work, and I will see you later.